So I just solved a couple of hours ago the bug, and it was something really stupid. I was laughing my ass off today. So I'm just gonna explain what the actual bug was, the error, and then I'm probably gonna continue to do the list that I have there. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is create a function to set the names of the nodes. To differentiate the nodes that I create from code than the ones that I create from the editor. I believe that everything is working fine, and the actual bug wasn't actually from the global signals class. I think that the global signals class is working fine. So it was something else that was really dumb. So I'm probably gonna leave. I tried to change some things on the global signals class in order to keep track of the object, but I think that I'm pretty sure that this wasn't. No, I know for sure it wasn't a problem. I'm not really sure. I'm not 100% sure that it's not going to be a problem eventually, the way that I'm doing things there. But I think it doesn't matter that much because it seems that it's working fine. So I tested a couple of different ways, and I still have on the code there that I'm going to have to remove now. The stuff that I added should I added just another variable on the global signals to keep track of. Just subscribe an object, the object pointer basically on a hash map, just so I could see that if I made another check on the emit signals function to check to see if the pointer still exists, because I'm pretty sure, and this is a part I'm not 100% sure, but I am confident that if you register a pointer in a class from another class, then if the other class is deleted, the pointer from the class you register is going to become a null pointer. So yeah, if you pass a pointer to an object, for example, on a function, and then you make that object a member variable of some class, and then later on the object is deleted, then when you try to access the member variable from the class, it's just going to be a null pointer. But this is the part I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it is like that it works. And that's basically what I did, and I checked to see if it was a null pointer on the emit signal, and then skipped the function call if it was a null pointer. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that I think I got confused last time, so I commented out the emission of the signal on the physics slider, I think, and then later I commented out the parts on the global signals that is responsible for actually triggering the callable. And then I thought it was because of that, but it turns out that it wasn't. So I commented this part out, and I thought it was because of this, but it wasn't. But this one I looked into the actual implementation that they have for the normal signals, and I think that the check doesn't prevent the check to see if it's valid. This part I'm not 100% sure if it is like that or not, but this get object here, it gets from uses the object DB to get the instance based on the object ID. So this one is still, I think it's working fine, so I'm gonna leave it like this, but it could be the case that there is a problem, so later on I might have to review this, but it seems that it's working out. But the actual problem was that for whatever reason, this children wasn't getting anything. And I'm not 100% sure what I changed, because I tried some variations of the way that I'm adding the nodes here. But the first time that I tested this, it was getting something, and I forgot to put the check here to see if this is empty or not. I put the check here on this one, but I forgot to put on this one, because the last time that I did this, it was working. but it was actually getting Mesh Instance 3D, and this was as Mesh Instance 3D as well. And I tried both approaches, both with Mesh Instance 3D and with the Graph Node 3D. But it looks like this doesn't return anything now, and I'm not sure why. But if you use this other function here, get children, this one returns all the children of the Graph3D, and this one seems to be working. So the issue was I was trying to access the index of the thing without checking to see if it's empty. And that was the thing that was causing the memory leak. So I should have went with the debugger first here. And yeah, this was basically what allowed me to figure this out. And yeah, kind of like a very silly mistake, but it happens. So there was another thing I wanted to say now that just forgot. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna do it like this. I did it like this in another way to check as well, using the nodes. So I thought it might be because of the nodes that I'm pushing to the nodes here, and then for whatever reason that makes it so that the other function doesn't work. But I also try to comment out this part here, and then like I try a bunch of different variations, and it still didn't work. But I think it's just better. So the last time that I tested was with this, and it seems that it's working now. But I think that is better if I just remove this stuff, because this function is not even going to be the purpose. Like the purpose is not even to do anything with the nodes. I'm just doing like this to test now. But I still think it's better to access from the nodes that I have here instead of using functions from Godot to access from the node class. Because here it seems that is like it is more the intended purpose of having the member variables here, and I think it's better. So I'm just gonna get it from the nodes, which I tried as well and it was working. I'm just gonna show there. Now I'm changing the values of the camera and the label to see if it becomes better, the visualization. The label is kind of weird because I'm not really sure if I'm doing the correct like if the size makes sense there that I'm doing. But I guess I can compare with the one that I have on the front end. Which is this one. Yeah, so I think it's kind of weird because, but it might be just a distance thing there. Because the label looks kind of small, but it's already big. Because it's big in relationship to the sphere. So I think it's just a size thing that is. So probably another thing that I'm gonna do now is just to look into the world. I think it's is the environment. Maybe it's world environment node. Should add a background to the scene. So that's to see if I can get closer to this thing here. But I think probably creating the function to set the node names is better. So I'm gonna look for the headless code that I have there that I'm already setting the node name just so I can copy, and then I'm gonna search how to build a string with the. I'm gonna create a static global variable based on the way that they create the global objects that they have from the class DB and the object slots. Either one of them, I'm just gonna copy the way that they do it. But it's basically going to be a static variable that is an int, and yeah, so it's just going to be based on that int, and then I create a simple function that's every time the function is called increases the value after setting the node name. So it's going to receive a node pointer, and then it's going to call the function from the nodes based on the global variable and the pattern, whatever prefix I put. So it's going to be a prefix and then the node name, the type of the node, and then adds the global variable that keeps track of the thing. Another weird thing that I'm not really sure if I tested or not is, and maybe I'll have to test this again, but I moved from here to the other one because I thought that this might be the case where, because it wasn't doing anything, but I think it was because of the other thing. But I'm not really sure if it is worth it to emit the signal here. I don't know if maybe it's better to emit here because It's probably better to emit here if I can, because then I don't have to emit twice. And the other thing that I realized is that I was calling this function called accept event, and this function you should use whenever you want to intercept or to break the signals. So it's the equivalent of stop propagation on the front end. It just stops the event from propagating to other nodes. But if you declare the function, if you define the function on the camera on the unhandled inputs, then it seems that it already works by default, so you don't have to call accept event. Yeah, but like you see but this is because of the rotation here. So yeah. So the thing that I changed on the camera is just I just added the Z factor again, because it's kind of annoying on the Godot camera that some situations it gets very slow. If you get close to the visualization, it gets really, really slow. So you have to zoom out and rotate. It's kind of annoying. So I'm testing with this factor here, which is based on the camera position. So depending on the Z, it's gonna pan faster or slower, I think. And here, it seems that it is working now. So right now it's just translating the node there based on the value here. It's pretty cool. Yeah, this is a problem. So I wonder if I decrease the value there. I guess like the easiest thing to do is try, but obviously like it might be more complicated because it might not be a linear relationship the best should do, which is what's happening here. This is an explanation, not exponential actually, just multiplication. So it is linear. So the further the camera is, the faster it is. But maybe I should divide instead of multiply. When it's close, it has to be faster. So when Z is small, it has to be faster. So when this is small. So maybe if I divide, let's try and divide. Let's do this. No, but that doesn't make sense. Yeah, whatever. So I think for the label, I'm gonna leave it like that. Already put this here. So I'm gonna change back to nodes again there. Then I'm gonna. Maybe I should do the names first. So the thing that I am contemplating is where to put the thing. So probably on the same place that I put the global signals, I'm going to put the function. Because the function is not going to be from any class. It's just going to be a function that I'm going to use on any of the classes. It's going to keep track of everything. I have to see how they do the object slots there. So, but first I'm gonna go back to using nodes here to test. Then I'm just gonna delete this stuff. Oh, the other thing that I tested is that if I put right now I commented out, I believe, but if I put the message on the disconnect there, it does print the message. So it means that this is running, which means that the comparison is actually working. So maybe I don't even need this stuff here. Yeah. Just gonna delete this. And the reason why it doesn't show the two messages is because this macro actually makes the function return. And then here I was testing with the first node. And also I can remove the bind set from this class here, because this way is a lot easier and better. So I think I'm gonna do two things. Or maybe it's easier to leave the barns here so I can initialize everything. Yeah, I'm just gonna, because it's not that big of a deal anyway, so. So I'm gonna leave it like this, but I'm gonna change, I'm just gonna pass this stuff there on the other function. And then I already have here. And then I'm not gonna emit the signal. Because then I don't need this function here. I think that's pretty much all I have to do before. So the part that is kind of confusing about this is that on like the other, when you get the object, I think is gonna use this one, because this is the callable that when you initialize with the emit signal with the macro, is gonna initialize a callable passing another callable, which is this one. So it's a custom callable initialization of the first callable. So when you get the object, is actually gonna use this function here, I think, because the get object from the normal callable is just a wrapper from this one, because it depends on the situation there. But this one is kind of weird, because here, if the thing is a null pointer, then it's just gonna return this thing here, which I believe it returns the ID 0, probably, when you do the comparison. So this is kind of the issue, because it doesn't really allow you to check if you do have the object or not, but it seems that it's working also, it doesn't matter. But this is the part that I'm not 100% sure, because there might be a situation where the object ID is 0, so yeah, but I guess it's just gonna, it might be a problem because it might send, you might try to call a function from another class on another one because of the difference between objects. So the callable gets the object from this thing here, which is the 0, but the actual function is from an object that has a different ID. But they both exist. But yeah, it seems that it's working now, so it's whatever. And disconnect is also working, so I'm probably not gonna change. So I'm gonna remove, yeah, this is basically the variable that I did. It's just a simple variable to test the concept. If that was a problem, and if that was the problem, then I think it would be harder to figure out, because then it's about synchronizing the reference of the object on the class. So like I would have to think about how to keep track of the object. If this pointer didn't work, to keep track of the object outside of the class, I would have to figure out a way to do something similar in the way that they do the ref. And I looked into the ref class, the implementation, it seems that it's not that hard to understand, actually. The only thing that they do here is just, they make this class templated, and then they just create a reference here inside of the class, and then all the functions are based on the reference. So they basically overload operators, and they also put these helper functions to allow you to compare different references and stuff like that. So it's not very difficult to understand what is going on. It's just a convenient way to simplify, so you don't have to remember each time if something is being deleted or not, because when you overload these operators, then it's going to automatically delete the class and create a class based on the scope. Whatever runs out of scope, it runs the destructor, which deletes the reference. And yeah, so it just makes it easier, but it's not hard to understand. I'm gonna delete this, and then I was adding on a condition there on the emit signal. I was adding here just to check to see, and then that's why I put the index here, because I was adding based on the index here. based on the size of the list. After you push the callable, you get the size -1, you get the index of the class. So I was mapping the index on the list of callables with this with the pointer to the object. So I could check there on the emit signal if it works or not. I'm just gonna remove this. So let me look for object slots. That's here. And the reason why it's weird, the name there is not 1, 2, 3, and so on, is because of the binary operator that they use here. So they use a mask on the ID to make sure that it doesn't surpass the maximum count. And I think that if it does surpass but this is when you get, but when you add the object, I think if they also use the binary, and then if it surpasses the size there, then they increase the size. And they use the same logic that C uses for the vectors. No, C doesn't use, I think C++, yeah. C++ uses for the vector class, which it just expands exponentially, I think. So it doubles the size of the vector every time that it reaches the limit, if I remember correctly. On C, you have to implement that on your own, but C++ on the vector class, I think it is 2 times every time that it exceeds. So let me... so I think that they use this variable here, and it's on the object to be... So I'm going to copy this stuff. And the question is whether or not I put it on the same file here of this one. Because it doesn't make sense. It's not really the same thing. Maybe probably the best thing to do is put on the object on the same file here. Because then... Yeah, but the problem is that is not really from... the main purpose of this function that I'm gonna put is for the headless. And the headless should be, it is like coupled with the editor, so I'm not really sure if it makes sense to put on the, as part of the object on the, because then it's kind of like it is part of the engine. So maybe, but the thing is, it doesn't make a lot of sense to create a new file just to put one function. But if I put on the headless code, then also I think that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because the function will be used on the modules. And putting as part of the modules also, I think it makes more sense to put somewhere in the same space that the engine stuff is. Which is why I put the global signals here as well. So maybe it does make sense to put on this file here. I think I'm just gonna put here and then I'll think about this later. It's probably better to just put it on the object because it makes more sense. Because every time that I have a new object, I'm gonna want to use the thing, so it doesn't make sense to force to include the global signals if I'm not gonna use global signals, but I'm going to set the name. Then it makes sense to have in the same file as the object. Yeah, so I'm not really sure why it's showing this now. I actually understand. So the reason why it's showing now is because I changed the emit signal from the custom physics to the slider. So what happens is that when I put the function on the custom physics, it doesn't run the emit signal in the initial phase, because the emit signal runs on the initialization of the physics slider, which happens on the constructor of the custom physics. So, but it is still, this is the part that I think is kind of weird, because the function inside of the physics slider should be emitting a signal, a normal signal, which means it should be calling this function here, which means it should be emitting the global signal. But I think, and this, I think this is the part that I was confused by. So maybe it doesn't work. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that it's gonna work. And the reason why the color is like this, as it seems that there is an error, is because of the message that I put there. But it's just like I did it so that it is this way, because it doesn't matter. I still have to figure out how to do the messages in a way that doesn't show display error. So it would be better, obviously, if the message was more like the messages that show up when you change a member variable of a class, because obviously it's not supposed to be an error message. But it's just like whenever you try to emit a signal and it doesn't, there's nothing listening to the signal, the scope or the signal name don't exist, the function just displays the message and then returns. So it's supposed to work this way. It's depending. Just gonna do zoom and then. Also, I'm not really sure if this is normal or it always takes some time to load everything. So it's still working. So maybe I will use ChatGPT to see if I can figure out how to log the messages without displaying as if it is an error. But so I'm gonna do the functional. Now let me think about the penning as well. So maybe I try, before I do this, I just try to do it in the same way I was doing before. And just change this value here. Because this value I basically copied from the calculation that they do there. I think they divide 1 by 150. Maybe just do 1 divided by 15 like I was doing there. So I'm going to put it on the object class, and I'm going to copy the way that they do it. So I'm going to copy first here. So actually, yeah, it's just gonna be this one actually, and then I have to copy the set name function. So I'm gonna look into the headless thing. I don't remember where I was setting the name to test. It was here. A set name. That's basically the function. So I'm gonna receive a node and then just set. I think you have to Yeah, you need the owner as well. But the owner is for... Yeah, so I'm gonna leave this function like this. So basically, when you're gonna save a file from code, you need to specify the owner. You need to set the owner for the node that you create. Otherwise, it doesn't save on the file. So the owner has to be the root of the thing, so that it saves on the file when you use the package sync to save. That's basically what I'm doing here. But the only thing that I'm gonna do is that instead of using this set name function, I use the one that I'm gonna create there. So set node name. So should I return an error? I'm just gonna do a void. This is the thing that I have just seen there. So I have to figure out how to make the pattern, and I'm probably gonna ask ChatGPT. So I need the... So I'm probably gonna do like underscore HD for headless, then another underscore, and then nodes type, and then the integer. So what's gonna be the name? Yeah, probably this. So here is slot counts. It's just a static unit structure. And then here I increase. So here is gonna have a space. I'm just gonna... So from every node that I initialize from codes, I'm going to use this to set the name. And also on the modules that I create there, I'm going to do this as well. So I was thinking about as well, like putting this on the function that runs after the objects are initialized, but then it doesn't make sense because you wouldn't allow me to differentiate the classes that I start from nodes, from the codes, than the ones from the editor. I think it's just as simple as this. So that class. think it's gonna understand. So what I'm gonna do next time is just put this on the, every time that I initialize on the functions on the Graph3D, I'm gonna put this. Actually, it's better. Yeah, I'm gonna call this from the, I'm gonna put this on a GraphEdge 3D class. Yeah, but how I'm gonna maybe should know. So I think it's probably better to use another project. So I have to run from headless again. Should have been a long time, so I don't remember. I think I have to, if I want to run from headless, I need to pass the project path and pass headless. So I'm gonna remember what I did on the headless code, and then I'm gonna create another project from here. Then I'm gonna remember what I did there, and then. So it seems that, yeah, it's not that bad now. Yeah, so it's still fine. Yeah, so this probably is fine for the camera speed. I also have to look into the environment. So yeah, I'm gonna create a new project to make sure to mask the other one up. Then, because I need to, the nodes that I initialize and I set the name like this, I have to see them on the editor to see if the name is different, because if I add the node from the editor, then it's just gonna run the normal way, which is just gonna give the name that it usually does. And the way that the editor works is that if you add a node that already exists on the scene, it's just gonna add a number at the end. So it's not gonna allow me to see if this is working. So I need to add code. I need to add node from code. And if I add from the Graph3D, then first I need to expose the nodes as members, I think. But even if I expose them, it's not gonna show on the editor, because it hides them as part of the class. It only shows on the inspector, but it doesn't show on the node management there. Which I think it makes sense. So let me think about the name. So I created project. I'm gonna create a simple scene, and then I'm gonna open on the file, get the path. I'm trying to think if this is the best name or not, because it's kind of confusing. I'm just gonna leave it like this. I'm gonna delete this function as well, and I'm not gonna connect the node anymore, because I don't need. Yeah, actually, it doesn't matter that much, so I'm just gonna leave it here in case I would change my mind and I want to do it from here. doesn't matter. Yeah, so this is the thing though. Yeah, so I think every time that I add, or maybe for all the classes that I create on modules, I set the name for the class. Even but then it becomes a problem, I think. Because then if I add from the, yeah, it has to be outside of the class. So that's the issue. So the issue that I'm thinking about is that if there are classes that, I guess I can just create a button even if I create a function. Actually, it doesn't matter. So I shouldn't set the name. Kind of does matter actually. So let me think on this. Because the problem is that for every time that I have a class that is gonna create other classes, it's gonna add those classes as a child of the class. Then obviously, if I want to create a class from code, it's gonna the children are gonna fuck it up because yeah, they're gonna have the same name whether initialized from the editor or from the code. If I don't set the name inside of the constructor of each class or inside of each class. So I was thinking, obviously I can initialize, but then like if I have to initialize each class separately and then build up, then it defeats the purpose of creating the other classes. So the question is, and maybe I should make it a recursive function. So check to see, like depending on what class I pass, I just check to see the children, and then I set the name of the children as well. So that's every time that I call the function, every time I initialize a class, any class, then it's gonna set all the nodes related to that class based on the pattern there. So maybe I think I got it from ChatGPT if I remember. It's a recursive this function here. So I can do a variation of this. So I pass a node and yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And then I make it based on the root and the child. So I want to copy this function. Maybe you should test with the other way first. Just say I want to create. Let me do this other thing first. So I need the path. I have to. So I'm gonna do this. Then I'm going to say. I think it has to be inside of the loop. Because obviously every time that you get a child increase. That's probably should be here, and then one at the end. I'm not really sure if it's necessary to have one in the end there. Because just gonna hit here, the base condition is this one. So, or maybe put the counts at the top of the function. Yeah, but then it doesn't make sense. Now this not sure if this is the best. So the thing that I'm not sure is whether or not I should put this name after the loop here. Because I think once it hits the base condition, it's gonna continue on the loop. But at the very end, I think it's probably gonna run after, but I think it doesn't make sense to put after. Because I don't want the, yeah, for each one is gonna add one time. I'll say it's only one node. Then it's gonna go through here, it's gonna get to this condition because it doesn't have childs. It's gonna be a child is a null pointer, so I'm just gonna go here. Which means it's gonna set the name for the nodes, then it's gonna increase the counts. And it's gonna call again, it's gonna be this condition, which is gonna return, which is gonna make it continue to run from this place. And then it's just gonna, is it gonna call this now? That's the problem. I think it's not gonna call this because the child count is gonna be 0. So maybe so I think I have to do it here as well. So just do the same thing here. And so I do this pattern here. I'm not really sure though. The recursive functions are hard to visualize. It stops at the points and then it's gonna, like, depending on the situation, it's gonna continue on the loop, then go back again. So it's gonna be diagonally. So at the very end, when it reaches the bottom, it's just gonna return. But then, so when there is no more children, I think it's gonna continue. So like when the child count is equal to I, that's the thing that's kind of confusing. But I think at that point it already went over. Yeah, it already went over all of them. So let me think on a situation where there's only one node. The problem is that I think if there's only one node, it's probably gonna return 0. And I think it's not gonna run this, which means you have, so let's say it has one child and it runs here, calls again. The third time would hit the condition. And then it would try to go again. And then it would continue here. Yeah, but I think on that situation, I don't want to just set it here. I'm just gonna test like this, and then it doesn't work. So like I do think that I need to put this here on the case that there's only one node, but I don't want to put it in the case there are more, because it's gonna set the name twice for one node. Maybe this is not necessary as well. Yeah, I'm gonna test like this. Let's see what happens. I have to remember how I did this. I think the only thing that I'm gonna do is call setName. So let me think. Yeah, I was using, yeah, so it's gonna go from here. It's gonna get initial state, and it's not gonna have anything. Oh, it has initial state because it already has a scene there. Oh, this part I didn't do, which is the part that, because yeah, the last time I stopped on here because I had to solve the other stuff. So I'm gonna have to think about this as well later. But I need to do this other branch here when I'm just creating everything from code. But I got this thing from the other class. Just gonna have this thing roots. Yeah, the get initial states, the one that uses the project settings, should get all the things based on the root path of the project. So this, I copied some parts of this from the other, and then I changed some parts. So it gets all the packet things from the thing. We inputs them here, which means that it's not going to return false because it already has. And then it checks if there is a main thing. The main thing is the one, is the only one that is differentiated from the other ones because it determines what shows up first when you're running your project. So this is going to return true, which means it's going to go here. And this already has the things based on this function here. So it's going to loop over the things and it's going to call this function for each one, which passes the root node of the thing. The root node of the thing you can get from the packet thing, which I'm doing on the other function. And then after it does that, it's going to call project settings and it's going to save everything, if I remember. And all that this is doing is creating two mesh instance 3D, adding to the thing. So setting the owner, adding as a child of the thing. Then I set the name of the thing now from the code. And then, yeah, so true mesh instance 3D. I'm setting one. I'm setting the mesh of one of them and not on the other one. And you have to do this stuff after you add and you set the node, if I remember correctly. So that's all that is happening, and then it's gonna save this thing. So it loops over all the scenes and then calls this thing, which creates a new thing. This is the roots of the scene, so this is gonna pack the roots. So it's gonna serialize the information from the root node on the package scene, and then uses the resource saver to write that through the file. So the thing that I don't remember is the sync path. That's the thing. The sync key. So it is when I save. So it's here. Oh, so is the path that I get from here. So it's just going to be the same name there, I think. Yeah, because this situation is whenever you already have a project. So I'm just getting the scenes that already exist. So the cache scenes. So the names are going to be based on whatever name I put on the scene there. And then the other part is the one that I didn't do, which is building from scratch. But it would be basically the same thing. You just choose the path here. Yeah, so what should happen is that it should... I just need to remember the command here. But what it should do is to just add two mesh instance 3D on that project there. So I have to pass the path. Yeah, so I think it's this command here. I don't remember if it's gonna... Well, you can... So this command is the one that you usually use anyway, to run Godot from the terminal if you want to run the project directly without opening the project manager. So you pass E for editor, then the path of the project. And then here is the flag that I changed, which is headless, which is going to make it run this code instead of running the thing, if I remember correctly. But actually, I think I have to compile this. Before I do this. Because I don't remember if I did this. It's probably going to take some time because they changed the object file. So it has to recompile everything. So if everything is correctly, what this should do is create based on the name that I have here, which is going to create true mesh instance 3D with this name here that is based on the type. So where is no? Oh, it's because the object file doesn't have access to the nodes. Oh. So the thing is, if I do object, I'm not sure if it's gonna. But this is not very good anyway. I should delete this. This is kind of annoying. So the issue is that the object file doesn't have access to the node class. And if I change this to object, then I'm gonna have to figure out, because you don't set the name on the object, I think. You set it on the node. So I'm just gonna move this to the other two tests to see if this works or not. I'm gonna move to the headless stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna move here, then I'll think about this later. Because this one is the one that I'm creating the nodes to test things. I'm gonna do on top of everything. Maybe I'll leave, maybe it makes sense to leave like here. I have to clarify how to... It probably makes sense to leave it here because that's the only place that I'm probably gonna use this. So I think that the answer to the thing about the classes that are initialized by other classes is just to do it the recursive function, so that I set all the names. So for example, if I initialize this class from the code, then when I pass this class to the function, there is just gonna reset all the names for the children of this class. So it doesn't matter. And then if I initialize from the editor, it's just gonna have the normal name that it usually has. So I think that this should work probably. So I'm probably gonna leave it here. The only thing that I'm gonna check, I'm gonna see with ChatGPT, and then I'm gonna spend time thinking about it as well. Or probably test different ways to do this. Because it's the last part here that I'm not really sure if it's needed to put this here. And the other thing that is kind of confusing is that, like, the reason why I'm doing like this is because I think that if you set it from code, then it doesn't matter how many times you run because the logic is always the same. So the main issue that I had, and that is kind of confusing to figure out, is if you create a project from code, for example, and then you change from the editor, how do you interact with the caching system so that the next time you run the code, you can run it regardless of the new state. That's where it gets complicated. Because then you're gonna get the same thing, but it's gonna have additional nodes. So how you're gonna know? And I think that the best way to separate is just because the state that you create from the code is independent from the editor. Obviously, like if you merge the two in some ways on the hierarchy of the tree, then all you have to do is put conditions. But as long as the conditions, as long as the states you change from the editor, and the code, like the code reflects the state you change from the editor, then it doesn't matter because the history is the same. So the new stuff you put doesn't affect the code, I think. But then obviously if you merge them together, then it can be kind of annoying, because if you remove one node from the editor that you had on the code, then it's going to complain because you're going to change the state in a different way. But I think that is a good enough compromise, because otherwise it becomes too complex to update correctly, I think. So but maybe like maybe it doesn't matter, because the key part is the traversal. So like you can have the same tree, but like I think it's possible. Like if I spend time thinking, I probably can come up with something like, or maybe it's not that hard, because the key is the traversal of the tree. So like the code can be viewed as, the nodes created from the code can be viewed as this separate thing, even though they're part of the same tree, the editor and the code. Because what differentiates both like where there is nuance in the logic is going to be on the connection of the nodes created by the editor and nodes created by the code, because the problem is the history. So, but if it's possible to create a function that, regardless of how many nodes you have on the hierarchy, is always going to have the same pattern from the code, then it doesn't matter, because as long as you have the nodes, you always have the same nodes that you create from the code, then the state is going to be the same from the code's point of view. And then you can always add regardless of the history, I think. So if it's possible to do it based on the name, then I think it makes it possible to create a project both from the code and from the editor. Also, I think, yeah, I compiled, forgot to run here. I lost the thing. Path handles code name. So hopefully it's gonna work. And I did a stream explaining this stuff as well. But it's just basically gonna run everything from the whole setup from the engine, and then it's gonna run one iteration of the engine, and then it's gonna run the function that I have as an entry point there on the headless, which is gonna make it run all this code that I have here, which hopefully is going to add the two nodes from the code into this thing. And obviously I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time, like the more I develop like this, the easier it's gonna become to see if it's gonna work or not, obviously, and what kind of things I have to. But I think that if it works based on the name, then I'm pretty confident that it's gonna be easier than I thought to integrate both stuff that you do on the editor and from the code. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because there's going to be a lot of things that it makes a lot more sense to build from code. And then it's going to be like a convergence between the gradients. That's how I imagine it should be. Because it's essentially a funnel. So you can view an entire scene as one node, for example. But that doesn't make sense because it's too specific. So there's some level where it's going to be a line where it makes sense to do things separately. So for example, it makes sense to view a slider as a class because it's something simple enough and repeatable enough. But the more you add things, then the less likely it becomes that you're going to be able to reuse it. And then it starts making sense to break that down into different nodes. So is the relationship, the structure of the data determines the structure of the nodes, because it's essentially the same thing. It's just a matter of perspective. So the structure of the trees is a reflection of the components and stuff like that. So it's basically the boundary between components and the tree structure, and is consequence of the data and the structure of the data, I think. Hey, what's up? So I think that it probably worked, because I do remember that it doesn't do anything, like it doesn't exit the executable automatically. But so let me see on the task manager, because I remember, but I think I'm pretty sure I fixed this, that at some points it wasn't closing the executable. It was working, but it wasn't closing the executable. But I think I fixed, because it was probably because of the memory leak, that because I wasn't deleting the nodes that I created there with mem delete at the end. But now it seems that it's working. So let me see. So now if I open from here, hopefully it has the nodes. If it doesn't, obviously I'm just gonna figure out what is wrong and then fix and keep going. Nice, it worked. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy about this. So obviously now, like, there's still a bunch of stuff to do, but I think I'm gonna continue on the list here, because like obviously in order to be able to know if this really works or not, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT about the last part of the function there, if it's necessary or not. But in order to truly know if it works, the only way is to figure out is to, when it actually gets time to build this stuff from code, then, and like the more times I do stuff. But to get to the point is I have to like clear all this other stuff up, so that like I have all the pieces I need to create stuff. So I think that's, I'm going to add the, so this is one thing that I was maybe I should test this now as I study this other thing here. So I think this is the node that I've seen people talk about, that it allows you to change the color there, the way that it feels there. I think usually people tell you to put sky somewhere, I don't remember where, but one of these options here, I think. But I didn't like the sky thing too much. Yeah, here. But maybe this one, because this one, the problem with this is that it becomes dark when you, like you can't see the nodes when you put the visualization. So I think what I'm gonna do is to, so yeah, this is the problem because you can't see the node in the middle there. Oh, maybe it's just loading. So I think what I'm gonna do is to, yeah, I have to clarify the basic structure of a scene. And I think that for the basic structure, I'm probably gonna create another class. And then I'm just gonna, because anything that is like kind of like a standard that I want to use on all scenes, it doesn't make sense to keep recreating. It's much easier to just put it on a node and then on a custom class, and then just use that class as a starting point. But the hard part is to figure out where the line is. So I'm gonna think about that. So. But I have to watch videos to clarify what people usually use as the structure for the GUI elements. I think they create another viewport or something like that, and then they put GUI elements as a child of the viewport or something like this. Trying to get into backend this summer, and I can't really decide. I'm not really sure if I understand what you're concerned about. It looks like it is not. It doesn't show anything there. Could be the. If I put this, but for this stuff, I think I'm gonna watch more videos to understand how this works. It might be a problem with the file though. That's the thing. Because it's not showing anything there. Oh, it's because I don't have a camera. That's why. So let me use the standard that I created. I put here. So the last thing that I'm gonna do after I run this is to run the stuff from code again to see if it's gonna fuck up the nodes that I put from the editor, and if it's gonna fuck up the nodes that I put from the code. The other part that is kind of hard is the state. This is the part that I'm gonna have to study more, I think, because the state. But I do think there's a way to manage this, which is just to create functions that are gonna. So basically, you get the roots of the thing, and then you traverse the roots to check to see if there is a node. So you do the patterns with the names, I think. So you check to see if there's already a node based on the name. And then if there is a node, you just cache, you just update the state based on the one that you have on the scene. So use class_db functions to get the state of the member variables and stuff like that. And then you reconstruct the node in the code. I think that's how you should do it. But maybe there's an easier way. So I'm gonna have to think more about this. But obviously, like on the surface level, I don't need to worry about this. Like, I can just keep it so that any node that I create from code, I just don't touch it on the editor. And if I want to change the state, I just change the state from the code. So obviously that's a lot easier. And that's probably what I'm gonna do in the beginning. But then eventually I can create more functions that are gonna allow me to synchronize the state regardless of what do I change on the editor, because the code that I create there is gonna have control flow to check if there is a difference in state, or to get the state that is the most recent. But yeah, that's going to be more complicated. So here, that's the problems that doesn't show here. And from the tutorials that I've seen, what usually they tell you to do is to change the stuff here. So that, like, put lighting sources and stuff like that. I'll change these values, but I haven't seen one that uses like, because what I want is the black background, but I don't want to put lighting necessarily, because then it becomes harder to figure out the material of each thing. So like what I'm trying to do is just the simple setup here. But the problem is that I think Godot works more based on the lighting. So the color of each material depends on the light source you put there. If you don't have a sky, if you just have a black background. So I need to figure out how to, if it is possible to do this without. But I'm not gonna do this today. I'm just gonna, so I'm gonna run the code again, the headless again there for code, and see what happens with this thing. That's the thing that I'm gonna do today. And then I'll think about this other stuff some other time. Because the next thing that I have to do is just to get over this stuff that's kind of annoying as well, is to create a checkbox and a selection, so that I complete the stuff that I need there. This checkbox is here. I'm not sure. I'm probably gonna do the same, obviously, but as I was doing here, but I want to have it so that it becomes easier to do everything else. But I'm probably gonna put, so like to build the whole component, I have to do it on separate classes because of the stuff that I was talking about. So I think it makes sense to put these components here on the same class, which is the custom physics that I have there. But for the whole thing, I think it makes more sense to combine different nodes into the thing. And then it's going to be like the entire component is going to be a reflection of the structure of the tree, which means I have to work on the headless thing to make sure that but I'm probably going to add I'm going to do it from the editor first, just see how it looks. So like I'm going to put the custom physics as parts of another box. And I don't think I'm going to do it in this way here that I had. I'm just going to do it in the way that I was planning to do here on this one. Just to put on the side here as part of this thing, this part here. So it's just going to be like a thing here with these configurations here. And then put some other thing here. So I'm probably going to spend, next time the string probably just going to spend a bunch of time trying to recreate this setup here, but with this component here on the editor. Then once I manage to do that and I know the structure, then I'm just gonna, so I think this is the difference. Like, if you want to build a component base that it is not coupled together, then you create a function. And if you want the component to be coupled, you create a class. So for components that are not coupled, and this is going to be the gradient, I think. So it's a gradient of density based on data that determines the spectrum of composition to object oriented, I think. And the line is infinite because of reality. So reality has infinite potential. So it's always conversion between the two. It's like a frequency of computation. It depends on what you're going to do. Oh, I think that the person, I'm not sure if the person's there, but I think they were asking me whether or not they prefer Node.js or Golang for backend. Now I understand. I didn't understand the first. But if you're still there, I never use Golang, but I think that it depends on what you want to do. If it's a simple website, then I think it doesn't matter that much. And I also don't have a lot of experience on the front end, so I'm not really sure. But like just from my perspective now, and keeping in mind that I don't have experience so on front end, so I'm not really sure what's the best. And so here I fucked up, so I'm gonna have to think about this. But I think that's for probably Golang is gonna be more long term. I assume that things are gonna shift more towards Golang and Rust on the front end, but probably not actually. So I think both of them are very good, but Golang and Rust are probably more for speed, and Node.js is probably easier for integrating everything because it's only one language. I think probably for most cases Node.js is better, but for specific cases, Golang is going to be better because it's probably faster. But I'm not too sure if that makes sense. Because the main problem with Node.js is that the reason why I think that Golang and Rust is probably gonna either Golang or Rust or some language like that or Python is gonna be bigger is because of artificial intelligence and data density. So I think the tendency is to get more and more websites that are dependent on data, and the whole complexity of the website is gonna be on the back end. So it's gonna be a funnel of information. So I think that's. But like the nature of the front end is going to be like high variance. So it's usually going to favor languages like JavaScript because it's easier to get people, but maybe that changes because of AI. So, and like I don't see a very good reason, because everything, like JavaScript is just an interface to interact with the C++ engine, probably, that most browsers are coded on, or some variation of C++ or any system languages. It's going to communicate with the hardware, and it's also like it's isolating the environment as well. So it allows you to isolate, I think. But like, I think that's like from first fundamental first principles perspective, I don't see a very strong reason why JavaScript should be the one language that is used. The biggest reason is probably because it's easier to hire people. It's like more, yeah. But I'm not 100% sure, because also JavaScript is naturally more composed, I think, because of the prototypes. So it means that it's probably more favorable for environments where you have high variance, because it favors more composition naturally. So I think that it's probably the reason why it was the language that's used on the front end. So I think there's always going to be like JavaScript, or languages like JavaScript are probably always going to be used on the front end, probably dynamically typed. But then obviously for strong types, it's just going to depend on the size of the company that creates the engine, the website, because it depends on the density, like the scale. So obviously here there's something going on. So the problem is, so I think that this is happening because of the way that I'm getting this thing, this state of the thing. Let me think of this. So like, I think what's happening is that it already has, because the scene already has the nodes with the names, when I add here, but it's weird because the static variable should be 0 in the beginning of the code. But it's probably because the function is recursive. That's probably the issue. So this is going to be annoying to figure out, I think, because it's traversing the nodes. So like, it's adding more nodes because the function is recursive. But if I don't make the function recursive, then I have a problem with the classes that add nodes on them. Add nodes. But actually, maybe, so the question is, does it matter? I think it doesn't matter from Godot's perspective. Yeah, so this is the question, to clarify. So whether or not, so for example, let's say that I add this class here to code, and this class adds 2 nodes as childs, which are going to be graph node 3D types. And then from the editor, I add a graph node 3D outside of the class. Will the name of the one that I add from the editor be correlated with the ones that I add from the code here? Like, what happens when you... But actually, maybe I'm overcomplicating, because I could always... And maybe if I use the system anyway to... I just set the nodes, the names inside of these classes here. It doesn't matter that much, because then whether or not but maybe it does. Because then I would add... I think I'm overcomplicating, so yeah, I can use a normal function there, and so I'm gonna delete this, sure. So I think I can just use a normal function that is not recursive on the code, and then I just use the function on the class, because it doesn't matter, even if I add these classes on the editor, it doesn't matter if they have the names from a code name, because the only thing that matters is that the names are unique, the ones that are created from code. Like that there is a way to keep track of. Because the reason why I'm not using the normal way that they do it is because I remember, but I'm not 100% sure. Like maybe it's worth it to do their name, but I remember that there was an issue. I think the issue comes with the sub resources from the last time that I was seeing there. So there's a problem with the sub resources, I think, when you just add nodes and use the set name that they use. But I don't remember, so maybe it's not. But I still think it's worth it to do this, even if it's the same, because it allows me to differentiate what nodes are being created from code and what nodes are being created from the thing. So I'm gonna simplify. I'm gonna just put this one and see if it's going to create more nodes than it already has there. So I have to compile again. Compile. So last thing that I'm gonna check. So compile and then run again the headless. Because I think that this time you're just gonna, because the things are gonna be the same. So yeah, I think that setting from code makes it simpler because of this state of the sub resources. So it allows me to do things like this for now. Because if I set the state of a class from the editor, then obviously when I run the code, I don't want the state to be reset. But here, what I assume that is going to be happening is that it's going to recreate the two nodes from the code, but because they have the same name, it's not going to add new nodes to the editor. But it is kind of like it's replacing. But I'm not really sure. Because I think that the caching of the scene is based on the node names. But if I'm wrong, then I'm just gonna spend a bunch of time thinking about this and how to figure out. Actually, I have to. Next thing that I'm gonna do is just focus on the. So probably next time that I stream, I'm gonna focus on this thing here. If this works now, if it doesn't work, then I'm gonna spend some time thinking about this. But I wanna solve the Barn set first, the solver. So even if it doesn't work, I think I'm gonna solve the Barn set first, like ignore this for a while, and then once I solve the Barn set, I come back to this. Yeah, I'm just gonna put there on the list because I wanna get the Barn set thing out of my mind. Yeah, so I already have this here that I was gonna do anyway. And the GD extension, I don't remember. It's gonna be necessary. I think it might be because the GD extensions allow you to change the behavior of a pre-existing node without having to add another class to the engine. So I might have to focus on the GD extension as well. But I think I'm just gonna start building stuff after I finish this stuff, and I'm gonna start building stuff from code, and then as I build stuff from code, I improve the system here of the names and the caching. So yeah, that's the main thing. The more I build stuff, the easier it's gonna get to build all the other stuff. And I think that's a lot better because then, like naturally, if I need, I'm going to think about the GD extension So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna focus more on the stuff that I want to build after. UI stuff as shooting off canvas layer. So this is what people usually do. They put UI on canvas layer. But maybe it's not necessary now that I figure out the camera there. So I was still adding. This is a problem. So maybe it's easier to do it with the, because I think I tested with the way that they do it, with the function that they have for setting name. And I'm pretty sure that when you use the function that they have, it doesn't recreate nodes. So I think the problem is that each time that I'm running the code, is getting the state from the thing that already exists there. Oh, obviously I can put a condition here. I can put a condition before this. So I can put the logic inside of the one that I'm using to set the nodes. So on this one, I can do it differently. I think that's what I was gonna do. So on this one, I can check to see if the name already exists. And if the name exists, then I don't create. And this would be, I think, the easiest way. So I check inside of this function if there is any node. And I think that's the reason why I wanted to create from I wanted to make this distinction, because when you're creating from the editor, like it's probably in most situations you're gonna put a custom node that makes it easier to understand what it is. So setting the name from the code makes it easier to distinguish the two, and then I can put the condition here to check to see if the node exists. And then if it exists, I don't create a new node, because it already has on the thing, which means it's a node that was added last time that I ran the code. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna put the condition inside of this function that checks, just see. So it's probably, I have to create another function, I think. Or maybe not, because this is the root. So this function receives the roots. So based on the roots, I figure out how to but the problem is so maybe I do it on the other function. Because like this, to filter the scene root to see if the node already exists, I have to use the other variable, obviously. That should be based on the other. But maybe, yeah, see if I increase on the other one, doesn't matter. So I can increase on both. So I check to see, and I increase anyway, regardless of whether or not I set the name. That's what I'm gonna do. I think that's the easiest way, but I might change my mind later. But for now, I think it's probably easier. So it's adding again. So I think it's adding because it gets the state from the previous time, and then because it does on the global variable. But it's kind of weird. Like, it's weird the static variable keeps... Because the static variable should be 0 each time that the code runs. That's the thing that is kind of confusing me. But I think I should put the condition anyway, because obviously I don't want to add the nodes if they already exist. But the thing that is confusing me, I guess it's yeah, but how does it work? It increases the name even though this value is the same, because I don't understand very well yet the behavior that's like, if you create, for example, if I add another standard 2D camera and I don't change the name of the other one, it just puts a 2 here automatically. And I'm still not sure. I vaguely remember the functions that they use to create this, but I don't remember what exactly is the way that they do it. They probably use a static variable as well, but what is weird to me is that it should be like... So it makes me think that there is something that happens when, because the static global variable that I'm using there to set names should be always the same, because it starts from 0, obviously. So it should always be 0 and 1, but it's adding here from the last point that it had here. So because it stopped at 3, then it added for 4 and 5, even though the static value should be 0 and 1. So it makes me think that there is some something happening when you save a package scene that is going to check based on the name. But then how does it know? That's the thing that is weird. Because I don't think that it doesn't make sense for this to remember the value like after it stops running. So that should be 0 every time that it runs from the beginning. So it obviously has something to do with the scene state and how the names are set based on the package sync functionality or the resource saver here. I think that it's probably on the spec function or on the resource saver that is going to be something to do with this, but I'm not really sure how it works. Based on the name. Yeah, obviously I can test if I put the same value there, if I hard code the value instead, what's gonna happen. So instead of using the static variable, I just put like an integer on the pattern I put here. I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna do this another time. So I'm gonna stop streaming now. And next time I'm just gonna continue to run the list here. Not sure. Probably I'm not gonna stream tomorrow, so I'm gonna do some of this stuff off stream probably. But if I don't, then next time I'm just gonna continue from this part here. So see you then.